Shrouded in untold mystery and kept from mortal eyes, the Underworld of Theros is just as much a myth as it is a true location. Erebos, god of the dead, is steward of this realm, and he plays final host to all the creatures that walk the realm of the living. Not much is known about the Underworld other than that its borders lie beyond the 5 rivers that ring the world, and that it must be a place heavy with despair and resignation, for even the lands surrounding the passages to the Underworld wither away in desolation. What lies beyond the rivers is anyone's guess, and if we pull up an excerpt from the Godsend ebook in which Daxos and Elspeth speak about the Underworld, Daxos tells her, "No one knows what death is really like in the Underworld. The gods tell stories of what it will be like, but only Erebos knows for sure. And he lies. That's all he does." In order for us to dispel the mystery and uncover the truth of the Underworld, we must follow a being of Theros on their journey that begins when life ends. We travel to the edge of the world, across the rivers that ring it, and straight to the heart of the Underworld to discover what no other mortal has. There are a few ways in which creatures enter the Underworld, but all are similar in that the creature's life is at an end. The most common method is for the souls of the newly dead to wait at the border of the 5 rivers that ring the world and be ferried across. The funeral rites of Theros include placement of fashioned clay masks over the face of the deceased, who is also given 2 gold coins to hold. The masks are thought to preserve the identity, while the coins are used to buy safe passage into the Underworld. As the souls of the dead wait along the mist-wrapped banks of the river, an enormous being of Nyx emerges from the fog, Athreos, the god of passage. The black and white aligned god of Theros is responsible for ferrying souls across the rivers and delivering them to the Underworld, and cares little for anything else. He carries with him a gnarled wooden staff that, when lain across the river, transforms into a boat to carry the dead. They offer him gold coins in exchange for safe passage. Those who stray are quickly snatched up by skeletal griffins and brought back to Athreos. A second and more painful method is reserved for those who try to flee from or outwit their own destiny. Erebos wields mastics, a near infinitely long whip used to snare the unwilling and bring them directly to the Underworld. Erebos' power to gather the dead and far reach can be seen on the cards Dragged to the Underworld and Inevitable End. With the dead gathered and the passage paid, it's time to cast off and journey into Erebos' realm. After a quiet float, the lazy ferry reaches the banks, and the mists retreat to reveal the features of the Underworld. To the shock of some, it isn't dissimilar from the land they just left. Rolling hills, calm waters, jagged mountains. The difference is that the Underworld is populated with massive marble pillars and enormous links of metal chain, which can be seen in the cycle of below basic lands from beyond death. This is meant to signify that the Underworld supports the world above it, and that it is a place of eternal binding. Now, whether or not the Underworld is peaceful depends on where the souls are placed, which is judged both by the actions a creature took in life and those that they will take in death. The judge of such souls is none other than the Lord of the Underworld, Erebos. Helland, god of the sun, was born thousands of years ago, and the first shadow cast by his light became his brother Erebos. Fearful of his shadow, Helland banished Erebos to the Underworld, where he remains to wallow in his own pity and jealousy. Over the centuries, Erebos has resigned himself to his duties, but takes solace in the fact that no matter how large his brother's domain grows, all things come to Erebos in the end. We're given a glimpse into Erebos' psyche in the flavor text of Dictate of Erebos, which reads, "I take no pleasure in your suffering, but it is necessary. Once you accept your fate, you'll find eternity more tolerable." He understands their fears and pain more than anyone, for he himself was the first cast into the Underworld. But he also realizes that it is part of the natural order, that all things must die in the end. What emerges is a cold indifference towards the souls of the dead, and it is with this indifference that he judges where they should go. There are 5 known locations in the Underworld, each tied to a certain color of mana and reserved for a certain type of soul. Phyleus, the white-aligned region. Whitewashed sandstone and an overbearing aura of apathy suppresses inspiration and motivation. It's a place for those who lived plain, uninspired lives, and the city matches their disposition. Norono, the blue-aligned region. A glassy ocean and meandering rivers slowly deteriorate mind and memory. Souls that are taken here try in vain to remember their past lives, but are met only with the knowledge that they've forgotten. Agonis, the red-aligned region. A molten fiery location, host to an arena where dishonest souls are doomed to fight for eternity. Tyzerus, the black-aligned region. The darkest part of the underworld. It is a place of torment and anguish, of false hope and resignation. It is also the location of Erebos' palace. Ilesia, the green-aligned region. A semblance of home. It's as peaceful and tranquil as the rest of the underworld is bleak. It's a place reserved for heroes and the righteous, so that they may be kept safe from the horrors of the underworld. Despite the different regions, there's an overarching sense of resignation and misery in the underworld. After all, it's a place of the dead. It seeps into everything and slowly eats away at the souls who enter. They lose their memories, identities, and eventually physical form as they are transformed into statues known as misera, which can be seen on the card Final Death. The funerary masks that the dead enter with are used to preserve memory for as long as possible, but even they break down and crack. The clay from the masks are given to Nyxborn coinsmiths, who use it to fashion the currency of the underworld. Gold in the underworld is used by Erebos to punish those that would defy him and use their failure as a lesson to others. But gold has another purpose. It is sought out by the dead who refuse to resign to their fate, who subvert the god of the underworld and follow the tortuous path back to the land of the living. The first being to escape the underworld was Phoenix, who rose to godhood and now pulls his minions along the same path. It's not an easy one to follow. Erebos and Athreos work tirelessly to ensure creatures don't escape the underworld. Cerberus, like Kunaros, Hound of Athreos, stalk the banks of the rivers that ring the world, while deathless soldiers known as Phalaskia guard the borders. Those who are caught spend the rest of eternity in the mire of punishment. But even so, many beings have escaped over the centuries. Creatures that leave the underworld to walk amongst the living are known as the returned, gray-skinned, undead semblances of their former selves. To return requires the severance of the body and soul. The body remains as a returned with the same skills and abilities it had in life, but without soul or identity. The soul becomes an eidolon, a spirit with no agency or understanding of what it has lost. Because the process of returning destroys identity, those who follow this path must first conduct a ritual in which they fashion a new identity out of a gold funerary mask. Once back on the mortal realm, the life of a returned is anything but normal. If we pull up the flavor text of March of the Returned and Grim Physician, we read that the returned have no memory of the underworld or of their former lives. The golden masks that they wear are the last gifts of the selves they left behind, and they sometimes mindlessly attempt familiar tasks. Despite having no memory or identity, returned are considered sentient and demonstrate fleeting emotions, the ability to communicate, and to perform old skills. The sense of isolation they feel when leaving the underworld pushes many returned to band together and form communities, even going so far as establishing permanent colonies in the necropolis of Asphodel and that of Odunos. But life for a returned is dangerous. Their cities are constantly raided by mortals who believe them to be abominations of the natural world. And just because they escaped the underworld does not mean that they are free from Erebos. He sends his Nyxborn agents to hunt down and kill the returned, bringing them back to him. The art of Agent of Erebos showcases his minion's effectiveness by the number of gold masks adorning its cloak. Mysterious and unsettling, the Returned of Theros serve as a reminder to mortals that life is fleeting, and that with death come many unanswered questions. Thanks for listening to this breakdown of the Underworld of Theros. Don't forget to leave a thumbs up if you like this video and subscribe for more content. In the next video, I will discuss the origins of Elspeth's magical spear Godsend and the journey it has brought her on. Until then, go forth and explore the lore.